All right, so first things first, I want to shout out my husband Jeff. I want to shout out my daughter Michelle. I want to shout out a good friend of mine from college. His name is Dean. I want to shout out my mentor, author King Benjamin. I'm going to shout out my other mentor, who author Blackbird. Sorry. And I also, lastly, but definitely not least, want to shout out my editor slash uh, coach slash counselor, uh, Tam Jernigan. Um, but I'm on here today to talk about a question that was brought up to me by my good friend from college. His name is Dean. Sorry, Dean, I couldn't go live on TikTok yet. I'm not quite there on the followers, so I decided to just do a video. But he wanted me, well, actually, he commented on a post that I did on Facebook, and it was about basically how I have been an author for about 16 months, which is now 17 months since the month has changed. And in 17 months, I was able to produce 6 published books behind me. If you could see them all, move out the way. Got my ring light in the way. Sorry about that. And here's the 6th one. But anyway, I put a post up basically with saying that, it's amazing and how crazy it is that I'm 16, 17 months into this game of being an author and in this industry, and I have produced 6 books, published books that are doing very well. And I was excited about it. Like, man, I'm like, this is crazy that this has happened, because I remember doing the first book and I didn't imagine me getting here talking to you guys right now. Well, I did imagine, let's not say that, because when I put my first book out, I had dreams and expectations that I wanted to follow in order to get where I'm trying to go. So yes, I did imagine me doing 6 books, but in the amount of time frame that I did it, that's what we're talking about today. And basically, my good friend Dean, basically wanted me to come on live and explain or talk about being prolific in this whole process. And wow, it's definitely has been a journey. We'll say that. My first book was probably the hardest one to get out, or the challenging one, because I wasn't sure that this was something that I would actually love and enjoy. And it's amazing that it has been a loving and enjoying experience. My first book, which is this one, is called The Code Keepers, Isha Side A. And I wrote this book when I was 23 years old. I remember it like it was yesterday. That's how it's easy for me to just throw these numbers out. Anyway, I was 23 years old. I had just had my daughter. And I remember at that point in time, I had written a few poems. And I enjoyed writing the poems. And I tell this story all the time when I'm talking about my first book. And basically, my first book came from me writing poetry. And that stemmed from my husband, who him and his partner were in a group. They had a rap group and they were rapping. And at that time when we were together, he and his friend were in the studio. And being in the studio had them, writing and making songs. And he would come home and he would play them for me, because I was a huge hip hop fan, still am. And I love, hearing music. And he knew that if he played it for me, that I would enjoy his music or enjoy the music. So he would come home and I would listen to him and his friend rap. And they were dope. And he was, this is a long story and off subject, but anyway, that's how me and him got together for the most part. His his word play and skills with words was how I became even more interested into getting to know him. Even though we have a long history of going to the same school, all that type of stuff. So anyway, when he was in the studio with his friend writing rhymes and getting, his music thing up to par in hip hop, I was writing. And I got inspired by watching Love Jones. And watching Love Jones, Lorenz Tate's character basically went up to the mic and had this poem that he had for Nia Long. Of course, she didn't know it was about her until he actually, said it, and she kind of, made the gesture and the face expression about it. But anyway, when he wrote the poem, I was like listening, and I'm like, I could do that. You know what I'm saying? Like that's I think I can do that. And so after watching the movie, I put pen to pad and I actually wrote a poem. And I thought it was pretty dope, from my hip hop background, because I've been a hip hop fan for probably since I was like 10 or 11 years old. And my first favorite artist was MC Light. And so, of course, I was, all like, I could, I can rap and whatever, but I never ever wrote a rhyme. Like I tried to when I was younger, of course, I think everybody did. It just didn't come off like I wanted it to. I wasn't that, creative, or I ain't gonna say creative. I just wasn't that sure of myself at that time to write a rhyme. And so when I wrote this poem though, and this was, like I said, when I was 23 years old, I got really into it. And I, kind of just let my thoughts flow and I wrote this poem. And when I wrote it, I was like, okay, what do I do with it? Let me show my husband. At that time he was, we were just dating, so he was just like a boyfriend. But then I showed him. I was like, what you think about this? And he was like, this is dope. Like you should write more. And so that one poem, I continued to write more. And so I found it to be very relaxing when I did it. And it challenged me and opened my mind. So I loved that part of it. So I was like, okay, yeah, I like this. I can basically take a blank piece of paper and do what I want with it, which was dope. So I did that. And I did like a few poems. And then I got pregnant with my daughter. And it wasn't that serious. It was just every now and again I felt like writing, I just wrote. And I had this notebook, I put it all in. I wrote some poems for my husband. I got to put my thoughts and feelings on paper, and I think that was what the main thing was. And when I did that, I was like feeling better about like this is, I think I'm comfortable with this. So then I had my daughter, and then after I had her, she was probably, maybe a few months old. At that time, I was a stay-home mom. So I stayed home with my daughter. And I got kind of, I ain't gonna say bored, but I was trying to find myself. So I was like, you know what, let me, go back to writing poems again, and, maybe I could spark something. And when I did that, I was like, okay, I'm good. But then I was like, I wonder if I could write a story. I don't know how that happened. It's just one of those things that just kind of, I wonder if I could actually write a book. And so I went to my mind's eye and I started thinking about a lot of my childhood things. And I was 23 at the time. So, of course, I was still young and I was still, into things and going out and all that type of stuff. We were just getting into church during that time too. So a lot of things was going on at the time. So I figured, you know what, I'm gonna write a story, a fictional story, something that I would like to read about. And so I came up with this idea with this young lady. Her name was Aisha. And basically Aisha is a young lady who's a single mom, and she liked writing. And not only just writing, she liked writing rhymes. She was considered herself an artist. And she had some things that she was going through in life that she, was trying to get past. Her dad had just passed, and she was living with her mom. She was in the hood, and violence going on, and everybody was, just the typical 90s type of feel is what was going on in her life. So in the 90s, of course, if you knew about it or grew up in the 90s, it was a lot of stuff going on during that time, especially if you were in your 20s. Um, I mean, it was hip hop, it was everything. It was like um, you had this life that you just, thought would never change, and everybody was, out and about doing things, music everywhere, cars and guns and drugs and all that type of stuff was going on, going to clubs and parties, and it was just everything. And I think at that time, hip hop at that time was in its like maturing state, because it was developing from, or actually coming from the 80s sound into our sound, which is the 90s sound if you grew up during that time. And it was evolving. It had traction going at that time, some real good traction, because hip hop was becoming at that time. So very big during that time, along with R&B and things like that. So that's the time frame of this book. So during that time, my mindset was on that, and I was also in church. So this was kind of interesting to write a book like this and, also be going to church. So I wrote my words down, and they were all dialogue. And the dialogue was just between exchanges through all the characters, because you have to understand, I wasn't an avid reader. I wasn't big on reading. Reading was not my thing at all. The only thing I liked about reading was back in elementary school when we got called on to read out loud. That was the pleasure I got from reading. And doing plays and things like that, where we had to, go up in front of the class and just read out loud. I loved reading out loud. For some reason, I kick out of that, and especially if it was a big part, if it was had paragraphs and the person was talking on and on. I think I just like to hear myself talk during that time. I was big on, like I said, I'm very opinionated at times, depending on what it is. Especially on certain subjects that I'm very knowledgeable with, like hip hop is one of them. I'm very, very opinionated on hip hop. So if you talk to me about hip hop, believe me, we gonna talk, and I'm gonna have a whole bunch of facts and everything to back up my story. So that's just who I am. But anyway, during that time, I loved reading out loud. That was my thing, and I was, very good with words, and I think I liked that. I was a very good speller, and could memorize words and just look at them and just know exactly how to spell them just by looking at it a few times. I used to do that all the time to challenge myself as a kid. I don't know why. Sometimes just stuff just happened, and I knew this was one of the things that I was good at. So right before a spelling test, I would look at the words real quick and then flip the paper over or put it up, and then right before a test, I would bust it a or 100% on spelling test. That's just how it was. Anyway, getting back to this book, I loved reading out loud. So that was the only thing I liked about reading, because when I was in school, a lot of the stories in the books for history class and reading class and language arts, I was just like this stuff don't entertain me at all. It's not interesting to me. It wasn't something I wanted to read, so I never got into reading. Even when they had book fairs and things like that, I used to be like, yeah, I probably like that. But it was just more of the normal, like Judy Blume books and things like that. Shout out to Judy Blume. But anyway, those were the type of books that were out, and it was just like, okay, yeah, Freckle Juice and all that type stuff. And it was just like, yeah, those was cool books, but it wasn't something that I liked or enjoyed, especially in the time in my life at that time. So what ended up happening was, I was like, I'm going to read this book. I'm going to write this book. And then I did dialogues. Like, I had these characters going back and forth, having a bunch of stuff going on, barely any writing going on, like real writing. Since I never really had a creative writing course, I never really went through the whole learning how to write thing. it never really dawned on me because I hated writing essays. I went to college and high school, and still when they said essay, I just cringed like, oh my God, like I gotta write an essay. And then they wanted 5,000 words, and I was bad at writing papers. I hated writing papers. When it came to writing papers, I wanted to skip it so bad. That's how bad it was, to the point where it was just like, you know what, I was willing to just take the bad grade and just keep it moving. Because every time I wrote a paper and got it back from my professors or teachers, they were always marked up. I had red marks everywhere. It was just like, changing this. And he had drawings all everywhere, all that type stuff. And I'm sitting up here like, and I got to go and correct 5,000 words. I just wrote this. Like, and then you want me to go back in here and correct it? Psh, I'll take this D. That's just how it was. I mean, that's how bad I hated reading. And it was just like, oh my God. And writing. And that's crazy how all of this is coming about. But anyway, I hated it. And so when I wrote this book, this one right here, it was all dialogue. Now, I knew how to write dialogue. It was nothing to me. It was like, okay, we put some quotations up, put whatever I want them to say in it, put their names, and said and all that stuff. It was easy for me to do because I got into that because I study people. As a kid, being an introvert is very interesting as a kid. I became an introvert when my mom passed. I was like, 5, 6 years old when she passed. And a lot of my feelings and things at that time, I bottled up. I know that's not good. I know you shouldn't do that. But at that time, I bottled all my feelings up, and I never really spoke to anybody about them. Of course, my grandmother, my mom's mom, was always on me. She just, how you doing? She always wanted to pick at my brain, find out what was going on. And I used to be like, I'm good. I didn't really want to go there and talk about it. But she always talked to me and my sisters and my sister and my brother. Always talked, and she's always trying to pull memories and things out of me and trying to get me to open up. I just didn't. I was an introvert. It was just like all my thoughts I thought were weird. I thought were crazy. I thought nobody gonna understand me. Who thinks like this? That type of deal. So I just kept everything bottled up. My whole childhood, it was just like I could hear myself talking to myself like, yeah, they ain't gonna understand that. Don't tell them about that. That's basically what I was doing. And so, I kept everything inside. And so writing this book and getting introduced to hip hop were some of the things I was able to express myself. So I didn't have to tell nobody anything. It was just more of, I can just dress how I felt. I could just, do the things that I love to do. I can make my hair into things that I loved and enjoyed. I can show off with the shoes that I liked. I could, do all that type of stuff and be me. And so that's basically what I did. So clothes, shoes, and me being me just became my way of expressing myself. Not having to write or talk about anything. That's just basically how it all happened. So in this book, I did a whole bunch of dialogue at first. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm good with this, But I only did a quarter of this first chapter is how I started it when I was 23. And I liked it. And I was like, it was getting late that night that I did it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to put this up. And as soon as I did that, never thought about it. Never went back to it. I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to get back to it. My husband would bring it up and he'd go, you should go and finish that book. What's up with that book? What I'm saying? Hey, what about that book that you wrote? I'm like, yeah, I got it still. It's over, somewhere in my closet. He's like, you should get it out. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Man, I never went back to that book. I always said, yeah, I'm going to get to it. I got time. Time went by quickly because from age 23 to 2021. So right now I'm 46 and we're in 2023. So at that time I was 44 years old. So from the age 23 to 44 years old, I let that book sit or this book sit on a shelf or sit in a closet, not even touching it, not even complete it. It was, like I said, a quarter of my first chapter just sitting in a notebook. And I probably showed like a few people. I showed a few people from church because, of course, a lot of things were going on in my life. At 23 to 44 years old, I was in church. I was trying to figure myself out. I had a baby. I got married. It was like everything was going on at that time. So life was life. Um, and so going through the motions with that. And then I got to where things started to slow down some. You know, of course, I moved. We moved several times. Then we moved to Florida, that's where I'm at now, from Ohio. I'm originally from Ohio. So we moved from Ohio to Florida, and now we're here. We're trying to get established, and things was just, you know, just going. Life was moving. I had another baby. So it was just, things was just moving in life. So, of course, the book got pushed back. And I never thought about it. Of course, during that time, my husband continuously to bring it up because during the time we were together, I didn't know what I wanted to do. He would ask me all the time, what do you like to do? What is your thing? What is your, and I'm like, I don't know. Numbers, math, because I was a big fan of math. I was going to change my major to math in college, but I never got around to doing it. So I stick with accounting. First, I started off with business administration, went to accounting because when I graduated from high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Not whatsoever. An idea, a clue, or nothing. I just knew, some of the things that I liked. And of course, I liked fashion, but it was just like, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to design or do any of that. I like shoes. I didn't want to, be a designer of shoes. I'm like, yeah, I'll just wear the shoes. I can express myself on how I dress. I was good with that. I loved hair, and I could do my own hair, but I didn't want to do it for a living. I was like, no way. Ain't no way I want to stand up for hours and hours doing other people's hair, or my hair for that matter. I mean, I did my own hair, and I still do my own hair. But at the same time, it was like I did not want to do that for the rest of my life either. So I had no clue as to what I wanted to do or anything. So I went to college. I was just taking up courses, trying to figure out still what I wanted to do. So of course, 3 years into college, I was like, you know what? If I don't know what I want to do now, I just need to go outside because I'm just wasting money. And I just was like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and work and then just kind of feel my way through. And that's basically what I ended up doing. So anyway, during that time, my husband was hustling. He had things going on, and I was just helping him. I'm just, he was trying to get his rap thing together, him and his friends. So they was out in the studios at night, doing their thing. And then he switched to wanting to do some things of his own. I'm helping him. We're trying to get things built. We're, getting our relationships together. And we're trying to build something. I mean, that's basically what happened. And so during that time, he kept asking me, like, what do you want to do? You've been helping me. And I'm like, I don't know. I still haven't thought about anything. So then he kept bringing up writing because he noticed during that whole entire time we were together, I would write plans down. I would write budgets down. I would write just about everything freehand. I was freehanding even when computers was out, because computers didn't fully go into effect until I was a kid, and they started developing. I took typewriting and all that stuff just to know how to type. But the internet hit about 2000, 2001, and it was this big thing. And that was around the time I got married. So it was just like everything was going to digital and computers. And it wasn't that I didn't trust it. It was just like I still had a knack for having a pen in my hand. And so a pen, I was always constantly writing everything down, writing my thoughts down, writing everything. My grandmother used to give me a diary when I was a kid just to kind of write my thoughts down about my mom and going through that, when she wasn't there. We used to write her letters when I was a kid. I enjoyed that. So writing, I didn't know at that time, was something I was cool with. I was comfortable with. I was content with. And he pointed that out, like, you can sit there and write stuff out instead of typing it, and instead of using the tools that we have like Excel spreadsheets and stuff. I would rather write down my numbers. I felt like I trusted that more than a computer screen, which is kind of crazy, or PC and internet and all these other things that we're developing. So he said, since you like writing so much, you should pursue that more. And I'm like, yeah, okay, So he kept on getting on me. Anyway, I said all that just to say this. So we're back at writing this book in dialogue. And I did that in 2021 and completely finished the book. And so I was very proud about it. I was excited. I'm like, you know what? I can't believe I finally finished this book. It was a dope story. My daughter read it and she absolutely loved it. And shout out to my daughter, Michelle. She became a fan right off. She said, oh my gosh, she's already talking about movies, who she wants to be Aisha in the story. She already told me already, you know, mommy, if you do the movie, I'm her. And she already told me that. So that was kind of exciting for me. So I'm like, okay, you know, it's really that good. She like, oh my God, yeah, this is, you know, she wanted to read more. And my husband read it and he was like, this is good, babe. You need to go ahead and I'm like, yeah, you know, okay. I still was kind of, I was happy they enjoyed it and I was happy, but you know how that is. I'm like, that's my husband and my daughter. So it's like, okay, yeah, of course they're going to enjoy it because I wrote it, you know what I'm saying? So they're going to like whatever I wrote. So my challenge, or the challenge for me, was somebody outside of them liking it. And so I was like nervous as heck. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this book and I'm going to, you know, try to see if I can get it published. So I looked into a few things on YouTube. I'm like looking for tutorials and I'm like, nobody really talks about how to publish a book. I mean, a step-by-step guideline, I was looking for that. And then the type of book I had, I was thinking, you know, and the reason why I didn't know anything about the industry is because I never read anybody's books. I didn't know anybody's books. Like if you were to tell me, you know, ask me at that time or even time before that about urban fiction or any authors, I'd be like, you know, and give you a puzzled look because I had no clue as to who wrote books like these or even close to a urban fiction or any type of book like that because I wasn't into books. I didn't like reading. I told you I did hated writing at, you know, in college and even as a kid. So it was just like, you know, I didn't know anybody, these books existed. So of course, when I'm looking into publishing, I'm seeing all these ways of how to publish your book. And then I found this lady on YouTube and she had that step-by-step of clicking on Amazon. And I'm like, I still had no idea what I was doing. So my husband thought, you know, maybe you should, since you're on social media, why don't you start looking into people who are actually doing what you do? So I'm like, you know what, that's a good idea. I can just go ahead and follow some authors. And I did. Excuse me. So I went on Facebook and I followed some authors. I went on Instagram because those were the only two I had at the time. And I started following some authors. And so, you know, I was like, well, you know, I just follow authors. And then I was like, well, let me follow some that actually write what I'm trying to write, or at least close to it. So I went through some Black authors and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to start liking people and start going on and, you know, liking their comments, looking at what they do, just to kind of, you know, see if somebody could tell me anything about, you know, publishing. A few of them I inboxed. I was like, hey, you know, I'm trying this book. Can you tell me, you know, what's the best thing or the first thing I should do? And I got like vague answers. And it was just like, yeah, okay. I need something, some substance or something, because otherwise this book's going to sit on the shelf. This book is going to sit on the shelf. So I ended up following this author. She was very dope to me. I'm sitting here and she's just posting all these TikTok videos and I'm sitting up here like she is so funny. Like she got all these wigs on and she's talking and she's like, you know, got all these audios playing and I'm just laughing because I'm like, this was funny. Like, but she's actually talking about her books, how messy they are and how, you know, all this stuff is going on. And I thought it was just the hilarious things ever. And I thought it was pretty dope, like idea. Like I'm like, she on TikTok talking about her books, but actually, you know, doing visuals. And I thought that was pretty dope. I'm like, yeah, you know, that's pretty dope. So watching her got me to learning how to publish because she put a post up on Instagram that I saw. And she was basically saying, if you want to know how to publish your book, she gave this post and said, go holler at author King Benjamin. And her name was Blackbird, author Blackbird. So Blackbird had this post up. She's like, you know what, if you want to know about how to publish a book, you need to go holler at my boy, author King Benjamin. And I'm like, yes, that's what I need to do. I need to publish this book that I've been sitting on for the last 20 something years, and I need to get this book published. And I was like, okay, well, I think this might be my opportunity. So she put the post up. I immediately saved it and contacted the information on the post. And basically, it was just, scheduling a time for consultation. I was like, this was right up my alley. Our consultation to figure out what I'm trying to do worked perfectly. And so I scheduled it, paid the money and everything. I was contacted, saying it was confirmed and all that. Had it all set up. And so got into this call with author King Benjamin. And I just wanted to tell him on video, man, you changed my life for real. Like, and that's dope. And to sit there and have the patience with somebody who had no idea about urban fiction whatsoever, who had no idea of where to go. He was real straight up with me, and I appreciated that. And I tell him this all the time. He basically broke it down for me and just, basically was giving me the everything. And I appreciate KB for that. Like for somebody who, like, and I know you hear it a lot because I do now as an author. People coming in your inbox and they got all these, I'm trying to do this and that, and you give them the game, and then it's like, they probably ain't gonna do nothing with it. But then you get every now and again you get your people that really are hungry and want to be like, I got this, I'm really trying to do this. And I was one of them people. And I don't know if he knew that at that time, but when he was on the phone, he was giving me game. I was writing it down, and I was like so excited about my next move. And when we talked, it was just like, he was like, telling me stuff that he did that didn't work and telling me stuff that he does now that did work. And I needed to hear that. So while I'm writing all this stuff down, he hit me with the information, and I immediately got started because I told him I had just finished the book. And so he was like, well, you need to, go ahead and get started then. So he told me good luck, and then that was the end of our conversation. But he was the most coolest dude that I sat down. He was real. He was, he gave it to me straight, and I appreciate it. So basically, I used his information, got in contact with some people, and sent my book in, and had one of the people that I was told to contact to look over my stuff. And that's how it started. It was just, from there, it was like, wow, like, I can't believe I'm actually doing this. And going the extra mile to publishing this book that I don't even know what's going to do. Like, I didn't know anything about the industry. I didn't know what to expect, but I went through the steps and I did it. And that first book, when it came out, I was very proud. I was proud because, for one thing, I actually did it and put in the work and did it. And the second thing, it was the first thing I ever did that was the dopest. Like, my name is on a book. Like, can you believe that? Like, I know a lot of authors probably had that moment, and it was very, very dope for me. Like, I actually have a book with my name on it selling on Amazon, and I'm over here advertising it to people who actually are buying it. Like, it was just, it's the best feeling ever, and I wouldn't take it back for anything. Like, I'm glad that I actually pursued it. And so dropping my first book was very nerve-wracking, but it was very, very dope from the response I got from people. Shout out to Dayton, my city. A lot of people bought the book, and I got so many compliments and praises about it. It was very dope how to see my city just kind of like embrace that I wrote a book. And like, I mean, co-workers to people I went to school with, to my friends, my family, it was so much support. I was overwhelmed and excited at the same time. And the response I got from the book when people were reading it, like, oh my God, like, that was a dope feeling. So that happened. But the thing after that was really like, okay, I got to do this again. Like, so that was the thing. It was just like after I did it that first book, I was so excited and everything was moving so quickly that now people wanted a second book and they were reading this book here. Like, I'm sitting there like, so I got to come up with another book. Like, how did this work? I done told people it was a series. I done did interviews. I'm talking about doing 10 books on this series and, talking all the, stuff in the beginning because it was like hype. I was overwhelmed. It was like, yeah, I'm about to do this because I was excited about it. And when you put stuff out there like that and you have to actually work, it's like, I can't believe I told them people I was going to do 10 books in this series. And I got to do another one. So it was very challenging. So, but I wouldn't change it for nothing. It was the dopest thing I ever did. And I'm very proud of that. But anyway, the first book came and then I had to work on the second book. The way I proceed a book, I don't know if everybody does it this way, but I'm learning myself. So a lot of this became about me, learning me, knowing me, who I am, what I know. And that's where these books are coming from. It's what I know, what I've seen, what I've heard, what I've read, what I saw on TV. And I kind of just put these ideas together. And to come up with the books that I come up with, when I came up with Aisha, I'm just a hip hop fan. I'm a huge hip hop fan. And being a female, I wanted her to be that. I wanted her to be the hip hop fan that I was when I started out because I was 23 when I wrote it. So, of course, I could relate to a lot of things that she was like going through, not necessarily, going through at that time, but just a lot of things going through, like her dad passing. So that was a thing that I could write into the story and get to know her best friend uh, getting killed. But I never had a best friend that got killed or anything like that. But it was just one of those, I got to put something in here to make it dramatic, or something to make her push and keep going and wanting to do what she wanted to do and not stop. I know it was her dad had passed too. She was already on one, but then having her best friend pass just sprung everything else into action. So her going through that. I never was a single mom, but I was a mom at that time. And so the mother-daughter relationship that she had with her daughter, I was developing with mine during that time. So that made it pretty dope. I was in a relationship at that time. So her relationship with her baby daddy, Chris, aka Peanut, was an interesting one. And then I just kind of just threw my ideas together. And she's in the hood, you know, what hood dudes were doing at that time. It was like the 90s feel is what I was getting at. Dudes were on corners. Dudes were doing all type of things. They had cars. They had money. They had music bumping, and everything. The atmosphere was just different during that time. And so I put her in that atmosphere, and I tried to develop her from the standpoint of being a single mom, trying to take care of her daughter, go to school and graduate to fulfill her father's dream and aspirations for her, and also her own, which is trying to develop and become this woman that she was trying to be. So of course she's going through the baby father drama and all that stuff. Everything that was going on or goes on in a single mom's life, I tried to make that a part of hers and try to have her maneuver through life like that. So that's how the character was developed. Usually when I'm approaching a book, though, I usually develop the character first. That's just who I am. I like to sit in the character's shoes and then develop the atmosphere around them. And that's how the stories are coming. And then, so when I wrote her book, and I was like, it would be dope to hear from Chris's side of what's going on in the story, because everybody has two sides of a story, more than one side of a story. And I figured in this particular thing, since I love relationships and I love watching people, that's another thing. I study people. I like people to an extent. Like, I like people to the point where if I could be a fly on the wall, or I could just watch you do your thing and not be seen, then I was good with that. And I think I developed that quite well as a kid because that's all I did. When I was a kid, when adults talked, you couldn't talk. You couldn't be in certain places when there were real conversations going on. And so I would sit back and then just kind of peep scenery, peep the environments, peep the atmosphere, kind of get a feel of what was going on. And I could basically camouflage myself in those type of scenes and atmospheres. I was good with that. And that's probably how I'm able to write the books that I do write, because of studying and watching people so much, people in the sceneries, kind of just making sure that I had my eyes, on everything. And in the 90s, that was the atmosphere, period. You didn't go to no clubs and not watch people. You know what I'm saying? You didn't go out, especially from my city, you didn't go out on the Berg, and you didn't go out on certain streets in certain projects and not be watching. You had to be watching. You had to be looking over your shoulders. You had to be, it was just the atmosphere that you lived in. And so that was one of the things I developed very well and incorporate that in my books. So watching people was always a thing for me. And also part of growing up, since I was a little girl during the time that my mom passed, my dad was always there. My dad was a single parent. He was the one that I watched a lot growing up and learned and developed from, along with my aunts. Shout out to my aunts, because my dad had a village. He had his parents, he had his sisters and brothers, and he also had my mom's side. My mom's mom stepped in. My aunt stepped in. My cousins stepped in. My older cousins, my mom's cousins or first cousins, they all stepped in, and my mom's my great aunts stepped in. Everybody played a part in this person that you see on this camera, and I couldn't be more prouder of my background because of that. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot from my mom side of the family. I learned a lot from my dad's side of the family, and I learned a lot from him. And so, and my cousins, all of my cousins, I learned lots of things from them, just watching and just kind of peeping the sceneries of what was going on during those times. And hip hop, I learned a lot from that, and hearing stories from projects and different hoods and all that stuff. That's how these books got developed, because I had an ear and an eye, and I was very observant, and still am. And so I try to keep that going into my books, because I think it's important to know where you are and know how to communicate and conversate in books and things like that. That's one of my things. I love the relationships. Having a father and son relationship, having a father and daughter relationship, having a mother and daughter relationship, having the younger people and older people or elder people relationship, because I had older people growing up that really cared and talked and sat down with you and gave you good advice and conversations and told you what was right and what was wrong. And I had that. I had a religious background. My grandfather, my dad's dad, was a deacon. My grandmother, who was my dad's mom, was she sung in a choir. They were church going people. So I had that in my background. So when you see that in my books, it's because I had that. And the family going to church and all of that type stuff, that was my background. So it was easy because I could reach into my background and pull a lot of that stuff to my foreground and add those things into my books. So those type of things made it easier to go through and write 6 books. And I'm working on a 7th one. And going through life, I think people and authors, just going through life, you just learn things and you hear things and you see things and you write things down, and you're going through things in your own life, and it's like, you want to share that on paper. and get that out to your readers. And you always got somebody that says that they can relate to you, and that's dope to me. So um, that's how all of these books became books, and how all these stories are coming about. I have probably about 11 to 13 unfinished books on my laptop right now that I've come up with so many different ideas. A lot of them too come from what I want to read, what I don't see in the industry. Like, that'll be a dope book to write about, or something that I'm just like, why ain't nobody wrote about this yet? I'm about to write about that. Like, it's just like, that's basically how Mind of a Writer came to, um, how I developed that story. Um, I'm a huge Nas fan. Here's Mind of a Writer. Let me grab that. This book here. I am a huge Nas fan. First of all, I love hip hop, but on top of that, I'm a huge Nas fan. Nas fan. He's my number one on my list, and he has a interesting background that I thought would be dope to write, or have an inspiration to write about in a book, about a guy who has almost the same type of things going on in his life. But more of, I wanted to focus on the now Nas, because I think that's interesting about me for him, is that he's about to be 50 years old this in a few days or so. He's about to be 50 years old, and he has gone through the stages of hip hop, and I've been listening to hip hop probably about as long as him being in hip hop. And even further, because we talking about 80s, and I told you MC Light was my favorite. So watching him as an artist go through the things he's gone through, he has kids, and he was married, and now he's out singling and mingling at 50 years old. So it's like, what do you do with somebody who is good with words, and who is older, who's out here still trying to do it, who's out here with so many businesses and things, and now he's like out here still doing it. So, and not to knock on anybody else, but he's, like I said, he's my favorite. So I've watched him. And so basically, I wanted to write a book that I thought would be pretty dope to have, not necessarily be a rapper, but a writer. And I thought that was dope. So the whole idea developed from being inspired by Nas, and I kind of used his background a little from what I've learned from his words when he has songs out, and it developed this character named Amato, and him and his son. I thought that was a very dope book, because I hadn't seen a father and son book by any authors, and I was like, I'm about to do this, because if anything I knew about how men moved a little, and how they thought a little, and how they talked a little, and things that they would do in certain situations. A lot of the guys in my books are 90s developed, because I'm from the 90s. So, and the dudes back then moved different than the dudes move now. And to be an older guy who has moved the way you move, how do you move now? You know what I'm saying? How do they move now? And I thought that would be dope to do. And so I came up with this book, and I developed this character who has a great relationship with his son, and they are developing and growing together. And I thought that was pretty dope to do. And then in the story, I wanted to add my own twist and creativeness to it, because being an author, I think it's pretty dope when you can be creative along with your writing. It's one of the things that it's crazy, because I never went to school for any of this. I just have ideas and good creativeness, and a great team that I work with that can develop and make things happen. So I definitely want to shout out to them, because I don't stand here alone. I lean on a lot of people, and they make me look good, and I appreciate them for doing that. So when I'm writing these books and I'm like getting all these praises and stuff, I try my best to praise them because, man, this would not happen if they were not doing what they do. And I love that they work hard because I work hard. I love that they encourage me because I love to be encouraged, and I try my best to give it back. And I like that we are all trying to make it and trying to make something very nice or very good for you all to read. And it's just dope to me how the things that happen behind the scenes develop into this. And it's really dope for me. And I really enjoy dropping new books and coming up with new stories and hearing what you guys think about them. Your comments and your remarks and your likes and oh my God, and things that you peep. That's the things that I love. It's like some things I'll put in there and then just be like, I wonder if they gonna notice this, and people notice it, and I just kind of laugh to myself like they really be on it, like they really are paying attention. Just like I had brought up that my Code Keeper series um, is a book of basically it's a book, but it's an album. And so when I said that, and I'm like, these is album covers. These covers that y'all see, these are their album covers, and writing this dope hip hop 10-book series. And they just, instead of just rapping and giving you music, they are telling you their actual stories, and they are showing you how they are the code keepers and the keepers of the street codes. And so I thought that was pretty dope, and I thought I was coming up with something like nobody would ever imagine or even think about getting, and y'all got it right off. And I thought that was the most dopest thing ever. Is I couldn't put nothing past y'all. Like y'all knew right off, like, oh yeah, we knew that. Oh yeah, we knew that. And I'm like, sweet. Like that's the one of the dopest things to know, is that when you're doing something creative and they catch and people catch it, and it's like, okay, cool. So but yeah, so I thought I'd get on here and do this and go into real depth about how all of these stories and creative ideas came about. But it's my background. It's me continuously watching and paying attention and listening and letting my mind wander and go into these characters' backstories and their lives, and actually seeing things through their perspective is how these books come about. And I know if I continue to do that, I can continue to write more books. And I'm excited about that. As long as I can be interested in what I'm doing, and as long as I love doing what I do, books is gonna happen for me. Like seriously, like I really do enjoy this. I really do get a kick out of developing characters. Developing characters in a scene is one of the best things I like about writing books, especially this book here. Even though it's a urban erotic book, it's probably next to the Code Keepers. It's probably one of my funnest books. I don't know if that's a good word to say, or if that even is a good place for it. Being an author, I should know that. But anyway, one of the best books that I've written, that I love how the characters interact with each other, and especially in the scenes. One of my favorite parts in this one is probably, or a few of my favorite parts in this one is when, if you ever read this is called Strong Addiction, by the way. But there's some characters in this book, and there's some ladies in this book that I love how they interact with each other, because it reminded me of my girlfriends in college. And they go back and forth, they call each other, bitches and stuff like that, but it's all in love. And I love how they interact with each other. I love the way that I wrote the guys in the book, how they interact with each other. The best ones, the best scenes that I like are from the Code Keepers books. And I have a few scenes in there where the fellas are like, either they're cracking jokes on each other, or they're basically having conversations about women, or they're just basically just talking. And I enjoyed those the most, because those were the conversations that I would get from my cousins. And they have no idea that, being a fly on the wall, listening to them talk is one of the best feelings ever. Also, from a lot of the guys I used to hang out around with when as I was a kid and in college. Me and my girlfriends used to love hanging out with the guys on campus and stuff like that when they had parties, or we playing cards was the biggest thing. Playing spades in college was probably one of the dopest things, or the best good feeling things that I've done in college, because you get to hear conversations, you get to hear dudes talk, and everybody's coming over, everybody playing spades and stuff like that was a big major thing in college, along with drinking. But but that was a big thing in college, and you hear all type of conversations, dudes talking, everybody stopping through, and I got a lot of uh, ideas from those conversations. None of them are actual real conversations that happen, but it was the atmosphere for me. It was the interactions that actually I paid attention to, that I use in my books. So shout out to everybody who played a part in getting these books developed, and everybody who played a part in getting my ideas and creativeness juices going. I just thought I'd come on here and talk about how these characters and these books are developing. I come up with ideas all the time. I'm just walking around, I'm just doing things, and then all of a sudden, it happens. But I have so many more ideas coming your way. I have so many things on the shelves that I want to do. I just wish I could do all of them at once and just drop them all, because that's how excited I am about what's coming down the pipeline. It's like September. I'm not going to tell you anything I'm doing in the next few months. So that was one of the things I had decided I wasn't going to do. I just want to surprise y'all now. I just want to just drop books and just, keep the entertainment side going. So as far as what I'm coming up with next, unless you are reading the book series, that's the only way you're going to know what's coming up next. Just know that I got some good stuff coming your way, and I want to continue entertaining you, and I'm going to have some fun with this. I really do. Y'all have no idea. I really do have a passion for writing, and the most exciting part is exciting you guys with new reads and new things and things like that. So I can't wait to entertain y'all. Like I think that might be how artists are in the music realm and acting realm, when they are have developed themselves into the author or the artist that they are trying to be. Because I enjoy being the author that I am, and writing the books that I write. And the most exciting thing about that is entertaining y'all. I love you. Now, I'm just gonna bring this up because me and my editor talk a lot. Like I'll ping her in a minute, and while she's editing and I'm developing a story, we talk a lot. She is the one that I get a real kick out of trying to entertain. Because she has read everything, she has seen everything, she's probably like she knows writing, she knows editing, she knows what a good story is and a good book is. And my thing now is to excite her, and I get a kick out of when she pings me and she's going off about somebody. And I'm like loving it. I'm like, yes, because now when I know I got her, I know it's a good book, and I'm definitely gonna get some good feedback on it. So shout out to Tam for being there, for always listening to me, for helping me open up, because opening up to the world and to this industry is the reason why now I love it so much, because I'm able to express myself in a totally different way from what I used to express myself, which was just clothes and shoes and all that stuff. Now that I'm older, it's like, yeah, all that stuff is cool. Doing my hair and stuff like that, that's cool. But I'm 46, so what can I do now to express myself into a way where it's like entertaining and dope, and people are interested in books, and writing poetry are my things, and I really do enjoy that. So shout out to my editor for helping me with opening up to the world on my skills and my way of coming and seeing things, because as long as I have that, then I will continue to write more books. Shout out to my husband for always encouraging me to do things, and first of all, doing this live. Shout out to my daughter for what she did in the beginning. And shout out to my mentors. Like, man, I love y'all. Like, I wouldn't be here or be able to publish books if it wasn't for you all doing what you do. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate my readers. Oh my God. Shout out to y'all. Y'all are so dope. Y'all are so dope. I love how y'all get into the books. I love how y'all don't miss anything. I appreciate y'all so much. Shout out to the other authors that are doing their thing, that are out here doing the same things we're doing, going through the same things, trying to get these books developed, and still going through lifing. I appreciate that. I'm going to end this now. And I hope to do more of these. I think I'm liking getting in front of the camera a little bit more. So hopefully we can do more of these, and I can go ahead and express a little bit more about myself and have you all see another side of me besides my book covers and books and telling y'all, hey, go buy these books. So, but I appreciate y'all, and I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Y'all have a good one.